I'm Hrayr Attarian, and this is Seeing Jazz. We've been doing this for a year and a half or longer now, about 2 years. And today we are talking with Chuck Koton, who is a jazz photographer. And I was wondering if we should just introduce ourselves.
Hey, I'm Chuck.
You're the star of the show, Chuck.
Wow, that's a first.
I'm Howard Mandel. I'm president of the Jazz Journalists Association. Leslie, say hello.
Yeah, Chuck, it's Leslie
Hi,
from
Leslie.
Naptown. How are you doing?
I'm good. Nice
Yeah,
to see you.
I was just telling Howard how much I appreciated your championing and supporting artists, when they get older and just giving them their flowers in this lifetime, like how you showed support for Phil Ranlin. That's really remarkable. And what I sense in you is that you're not just there to take a picture for the moment, but you're very aware of your responsibility to capture and document, and I just love it.
Thanks for saying that, Leslie. I just spoke with Phil last week. He sounded good. He said he would be up for something in Detroit, which I think you may have asked me about a while ago.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's keep moving and have Luciano introduce himself.
I'm Brian McMillan down in Half Moon Bay, California. Hey, Chuck.
Hey, Brian. Good to see you.
I don't know how to do the video on my mug there, but that might have to suffice. Probably better anyway. Okay, I'm a photographer, and I've been doing it of jazz since about 77. Still doing it, but moving on to the next person.
Thank you. Luciano, unmute.
Hi, everyone. I am Luciano Rossetti from Italy. I am a photographer in north of Italy, in Bergamo. Hi.
Thank you. And Bill May?
Hi, I'm Bill May. I'm out here in Kentucky. I've done most of my photography of jazz musicians in the New York, New Jersey area.
Thank you. Dana?
Unmute. Unmute. I did it. Okay. Hi, my name is Dana Pantovic. I come from Belgrade, Serbia. It's Balkan Peninsula in Europe. I'm trying to become a photographer, but instead I continue writing, yes, in English. That is not my mother tongue. So I'm looking forward to hear the real story. So thank you in advance.
And Bonnie, is that Bonnie Johnson? I'm not sure.
So actually, this is Bert and Bonnie Feinberg. I'm a childhood friend of Chuck, and we started our love for jazz together. So I have been following Chuck's career as a jazz photographer from the very beginning.
Great.
And shared many moments of listening to music together.
Great.
Hey, guys.
Okay, I'm turning it back over to Hrayr.
Hi. So we usually like to start these sessions by asking the photographer to tell us a few minutes about their background, how they came to do this, and what drew them to photographing specifically this type of music.
Sure. Photography, I guess, is in my blood. My grandfather was a photographer, had a camera store. My father was a photographer. This was in Lithuania before the Nazis rolled in. So when my father moved to New York City, he worked as a photographer for the rest of his career. And the first time I saw him develop a print in a large walk-in dark room, I was hooked on photography. And in terms of jazz, my older brother Eli, may rest in peace, was a jazz fan, had a lot of music. And one day when he went off to the army, I snuck into his room and grabbed Miles Davis's "Someday My Prince Will Come," and that was pretty much it for me. Hooked on jazz and hooked on photography.
And currently, is this what you do professionally?
I do it professionally in that I earn income from it, but my main gig is as a private tutor of history, Spanish, and English here in the LA area.
Yeah. Your sound was a little bit shaky again.
Maybe it's coming and going. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Maybe you can again mute and unmute real quick.
Okay, I'll try that. I did. I'm not sure again.
Now it's working. Yeah,
okay.
I don't know why.
I'll keep doing that.
And you obviously been doing this a while, and you've sent us a bunch of photographs. I would like to start sharing them one by one, and we would like to know a little bit about the circumstances, how you took the photograph, and any questions that the audience may have, they may also ask.
Sure.
I'm going to share my screen here, and okay, so this is for me it was a very stunning photo with all the
Thank you.
Wall behind him. And can you tell us a little bit about who this person is? Or?
Yeah, growing up in the Bronx and in New York City, I've been into street photography ever since I had my first camera. And I was just walking down Fifth Avenue one day and heard a saxophone and kept walking towards him and took a photograph.
And is this done on film?
Yeah, I think the street photographs that may be the first few you're going to show are all on film.
Okay.
Yeah, so I shot this. This is probably a 45-year-old photograph.
Do you know who the saxophonist is?
I do not.
I'm thinking maybe Sonny Simmons, but I don't know.
He did sound good.
I thought Sonny Simmons was playing the streets in San Francisco, not New York.
Well,
that's not Sonny Simmons. I knew Sonny. That's not his face. And he's a bigger man than that. He was a bigger man than that. But what caught my eye is sort of the Aaron Siskind background, the way you use the faded print and the textures there of the newsprint and coming off of the, I guess, wood or slats, whatever those things are.
I've been a student of photography for decades as well, so I've worked on developing my photographic eye. And although his playing caught my ear first, as soon as I saw him up against that wall, I knew I was going to photograph it. It came out quite well.
Yeah. And the periodicity in the wall, like this divisions, almost looks like inverted musical paper, sideways musical paper.
Yeah, if there was just I think there was some construction going on behind it. Not an easy negative to print. This again, a photograph I took on the street, actually in Union Square in San Francisco when I was living there. It was around Christmas time. I was around the corner and again heard a saxophone playing and kind of surprised there was this young kid. I've always asked around if anybody recognizes him. The kid must be in his 50s by now. And never could find out who it was. But I love the juxtaposition of the young man playing for money and the toys in the window behind him. So that caught my eye for sure.
And the tambourine, it gives it like a touch of dynamism with the movement.
Absolutely. Another street photographer, again, the sound caught my ear. This is down in downtown Los Angeles. I guess that's a bit of a commentary on the lack of gigs. Because this guy could play pretty well too, and I stuck around for a while. And fairly recent, probably 6 or 7 years ago, I shot this.
An interesting angle. Were you?
Yeah, I tried to get the words behind him.
Old school.
Yeah.
But you were standing above him too, somewhat.
Just a little. Well, he was sitting down.
And these photographs, do you crop them significantly, or this is?
I try not to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, if it's a scene that I can physically get fairly close to, I try and do that cropping in the camera. This is a digital image.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an old photograph from New York City. Again, just a guy on the street, good player. I kind of caught the crowd walking past him, and again, he sounded good. I thought the photo kind of worked.
Yeah.
So this is also film. Sonny Rollins, of course, at a performance at USC in their, I think it's Brevard Auditorium. I had tickets, and my friend and I were sitting kind of far in the back, but I just couldn't control myself. I actually went up closer to the stage and shot a few photos.
Again, it's almost like you're on stage with him.
I had a telephoto on. I wouldn't get quite that presumptuous.
And
but,
is this all natural, right? Light, right? No flash or?
Oh, no, I would never use a flash. Yeah. And again, seeing Sonny, someone had posted the famous Arcane Great Day in Harlem photograph on Facebook a few days ago. And sadly, Sonny's the last man standing.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody mentioned on that picture that sitting on the curb next to Count Basie was a young John Faddis. I don't know if that's true. Anybody know?
Oh, I never heard that.
Well, let's see. He would have been very young.
It was photographed in 58.
Yeah.
Well, he could have been.
I doubt if it was John Faddis because he's from California. From California.
Yeah, in 58, he would have been 5.
Yeah. I've often wondered about those children, if anybody has done any follow-up, because that would be tremendous, you know.
Yeah.
But after all these years, if no one has come forward to say I was sitting on a curb, they probably have passed because they were maybe the oldest was maybe 10 years old at that time. If you look at it.
Yeah.
Looks about that.
Chuck, turn your mute thing on and off again, please.
Okay. Here we go. Hopefully that helped.
Yep.
So, photograph of Kenny Burrell. I've had the pleasure of being able to call him a friend for many years. And I should acknowledge my friend, the late Philadelphia jazz drummer Sherman Ferguson, who I met at a gig at the Jazz Bakery about 25 years ago. And I eventually showed him some photographs I took of him that night. And he screamed at me to contact All About Jazz, which at the time was a newspaper here in LA. And I found out later from Michael Ricci, the publisher of the website, that there was a copyright infringement. And actually, that's how I met Michael Ricci, and I've been with All About Jazz for 20 years or so. But Sherman pushed me to photograph the musicians, and he introduced me to Kenny. He played with him for 30 years. And I'm grateful to Sherman for everything he did in encouraging me, because I'm not sure that I would have had the thought of really devoting myself to documenting these beautiful cats.
And this is also film, correct?
This is film at Catalina's here in Hollywood and Los Angeles about 20 years ago.
Can you tell us,
Mhm.
excuse me, can you tell us anything about Kenny Burrell's situation now?
It's been several months. I was helping him and his wife, Catherine, for a couple of years, doing some shopping. He had fallen, hurt his head, and, was hospitalized, and then a lot of rehab. But I've spoken to him. It's been a little while, and I think he's working on a book.
Oh.
I kind of am not really sure about the details of what's going on. I know it did create a bit of a nasty controversy a couple years ago.
Yeah, I remember there was a GoFundMe page to which I donated, set up by his wife, and then we got an email from his sons saying that no, they returned the money, and they said no, this was not needed, and they said stuff about the wife, their stepmom, and
Let's
Yeah,
not get
there
into it.
were personal issues that I certainly didn't want to get involved with. But
Yeah.
I've known Catherine for a long time, and she's a beautiful human being who's been caring for Kenny since this health setback. And I can't imagine anything negative about her being true, personally.
Well, he's
it was
not,
very strange.
he's 93 now. So
Yes,
good health and progress on a book.
yes, exactly.
This
Here is Slide Hampton at the Jazz Bakery, shot on film also roughly 20 years ago or so. He was playing with David Newman, and my friend Sherman Ferguson was a drummer in the band, so that was a lot of fun.
His nephew plays around here in Chicago a lot.
Slide Hampton's nephew?
He's a
Yeah, it was great.
trumpeter.
It was a great band. Again, every time I see these, I just remember how it was pretty standard to have a 5 or 6 night gig. And boy, things have certainly changed in the jazz world regarding that.
Yeah, here we have the jazz showcase where people come and they usually play a 4-night gig.
Yeah, so that's great. Not too much of that here in LA. Some headliners at Catalina's will play 4-night gigs, um, but pretty rare out here. That was from during that same engagement, David Newman playing flute at the Jazz Bakery,
Nice.
also on film.
I like the sort of ghostly hand here.
Yeah, how did that happen?
Random photo.
So
Probably moving faster than the shutter speed.
Yeah.
you're paying a lot of attention to framing these people and texture and light, it looks like. Are you conscious of that, or are you just kind of doing this on natural?
Well, no. Being a photographer for most of my life, that's one basic aspect of shooting that I learned early, is that, composition, light, pretty much have to be on point. I certainly wouldn't display a photograph, or these days I just delete it if they don't meet those certain basic requirements. Of course, Brian will know, the bane of our existence is that we have no control over the light. And some of these venues, it can be rather tricky.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've actually just put my camera down because it's just so dark. And I have mentioned it to people at these venues to just sort of think about lighting, because these people need to be respected and the audience should see them.
But you have
Well,
so
I
much
The Jazz Bakery was great for this, and it had a simple background, uniform background, so it made for pretty good photographs most of the time.
May I? I love the white balance. I like the amount of white you have on your black and white photos.
Thank
Rare.
you.
They're mostly gray. This one is great. Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
New digital cameras, the speed, the ISO speed on them is in the stratosphere nowadays, so that helps a lot.
Yeah, I personally have, I've been using a Nikon 850D for a while now, and if I use those really higher speeds, I'm not really thrilled with the results personally. Much more satisfied with pushing film as we did back in the day for that grainy look. It just looks odd on digital for me, anyway.
Yeah.
mute
Yeah,
and unmute.
noise doesn't quite replicate the grain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I still will shoot film on occasion if it's someone I don't have a good negative of.
Do you meter through the camera, or do you use a handheld meter?
Well, these are mostly places I've been to forever, so I don't really need to meter them. Lenny White, also at the Jazz Bakery. God bless Ruth Price for letting me shoot. I always got there early, and would make sure I was seated in a place where I had pretty good view of the stage.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you mute and unmute again, please?
Okay, he's unmuted now.
Okay.
No, he's muted now. Unmute, Chuck.
Um,
Okay, much better.
okay, great. Yeah, so
Um,
Lenny White was playing with Sphere at the Jazz Bakery, like about 20 years ago or so.
so with Kenny Barron and
Gary Bartz and Buster Williams. This wasn't their original coming together. I actually, Brian, I wonder if you were there at the Keystone Corner when Sphere performed.
Yeah, that was first time hearing Charlie Rouse, and it was just transported me, into the monk world.
I think I went there 3 nights that week. It was pretty mesmerizing.
Yep.
So they got back together, I think, and with Bart's taking Charlie Rouse's place. Tremendous band, obviously. Hank Jones at a weekend of jazz that Ken Borgers, a jazz DJ with the old K-Jazz and KLON here in Los Angeles, put together a 52nd Street reunion of a weekend's worth of performances at one of the hotels near LAX, and this was one great show. Phil Woods was playing with Hank Jones at the time.
is this outdoors?
No,
No.
no, this was in sort of a big meeting room in the hotel.
I like
Nice
that
black-
outline, backlit outline on his face on the left side. That's brings it out all around.
Yeah, yeah. As you know, Brian, again, we're totally at the mercy of the people lighting the place.
You see it.
But that actually turned out well. We just lost Benny Golson. This was at the Jazz Bakery again, shot on film about 20 years ago, more or less. These are my photo improvisations, little movement. It was kind of expensive doing that on film. So I guess I'm glad it's a lot easier to just shoot on digital and just delete those that don't work. But I was pretty happy with this one.
Is this you moving, or are you
Yes.
capturing his movement? You're moving.
Yeah, mostly me. Sometimes, again, I will try several things and see what comes out best. Sometimes I'll use a very slow shutter speed and just try and keep it still and let the music. Some musicians don't move much,
Yeah.
so I'll help them along. This was also at the Jazz Bakery. Tony Dumas, great bass player. Haven't heard much from him recently, and made some inquiries. I'm not sure how he's doing, but
Cedar a lot.
what's that?
Played with Cedar
Yeah.
Cedar Walton.
Walton.
So are all of these up on All About Jazz? Is that where you're exhibiting mostly?
They're not really exhibiting. I have a page on All About Jazz. I've had a few exhibits over the years. I probably still got about 15 or more photographs, many of these framed and wrapped in black paper from the last time I exhibited them. Trying to put a book together sometime soon. Maybe.
The Jazz Bakery does not exhibit any of these, or?
I had an exhibit at the Jazz Bakery. The Jazz Bakery doesn't really exist, hasn't existed since 2009.
Uh-huh.
Ruth Price does put on shows at different venues for the last 15 years or so, keeping the Jazz Bakery brand alive, but the physical space was taken over by a greedy landlord and his furniture selling tenant.
But I mean, the world stage, or I mean, nobody is hanging these up in the clubs, or
Catalina's has had, I think, they're Ray Avery's photographs on the wall for 30 years. So not really an option there. World stage, I won't mention the discussion about that.
okay.
But yeah, I'm actually one very good bit of news about the LA scene is the Blue Whale was almost a 365-day venue in Little Tokyo in downtown LA for about 10 years. A wonderful human being, June Lee, was operating it, and right after COVID started, it kind of went under. But he, within the last couple months, announced that they've got a new space. Sounds like a very ambitious project with a couple performance spaces and maybe a restaurant that is going to take a little while to finish building, but that's something that we're certainly anxious. The musicians loved it. They always made an announcement before the show to please keep the talking at a minimum and respect the artists. So June.
Yeah, I've been to the Blue Whale in 2018. It was a really nice space.
You're muted again.
Yeah, I'm unmuting.
There we go. This is the photo that's in the Jazz Omnibus.
Yes, so a dear friend of mine, one of the wonderful things, again, I'm indebted to my friend Sherman Ferguson forever to introducing me to the musicians. Azar Lawrence has been like family for the last 20 years. So this was backstage before a gig at Catalina's a few years ago on digital. And I can't thank Azar enough for letting me hang around and annoy him with the camera. But for my taste, there's not a saxophone player out there playing with the fire that he does. And only hope that some venue owners and some people running these festivals get the message and have him performing. I saw him at Monterey. He closed the Monterey Festival 2 years ago, and people were just screaming and standing up and dancing in the aisles. So Azar will see you in Palm Springs later this week.
I remember him with
Before you go from that,
recording of Atlantis at the Keystone Corner.
Oh, yeah, that was a great gig. So you said you were there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I envy you.
Probably hear me hollering on the tape.
I'll give it another listen and see if I can recognize it. Yeah, this is Azar at a club last year. It was actually being recorded. I don't think it's been released, but in between cuts, it was pretty nicely lit. So very happy with it. Another dear friend, the great Henry the Skipper Franklin, before a gig at the old lighthouse in Hermosa Beach. A guitarist, you may be familiar with Jacques Lejour, has been holding a jam session at the Lighthouse Monday nights. So they do still present some jazz. Unfortunately, most every other night it's various rock and roll bands, I assume.
This is also film,
This is digital.
digital.
Yeah, most of what was shot more recently, at least in the last 5-10 years, most of it is on digital. Charles McPherson, warming up. Brian, you were there for this Keystone Corner reunion. I think it was in 2017, maybe. Charles is one incredibly beautiful human being, as great a saxophone player out there as can be found. And at 85, I saw him several months ago celebrating his 85th birthday, running through Cherokee, and he had all the young cats in the band just looking wide-eyed at him. Still has the dexterity of a much younger musician.
Never wavered.
Exactly.
He comes to Chicago frequently, usually in August.
Yes, he has been, and of course, I don't really get involved much in the business end of it, but it's when I saw him at the Keystone reunion, I mentioned to him that the last time I had seen him was at least 17 years earlier. It was the only time I think I saw him performing in LA. I may have missed something, pre-internet, but he's been living in San Diego forever, and if when it's necessary, I just hop in the car and drive 100 miles. Photograph of Chick Corea at his 70th birthday celebration at the Playboy Jazz Festival about 15 years ago. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, obviously, giving him his birthday cake. Kenny Garrett looking on. I'm not a big festival person these days. It seems they for some odd reason, people will use the name jazz, incorporated in their festivals, must be a selling point, but you might have some trouble finding actual jazz bands listed among them. Kind of peculiar. I don't know what the psychology is there, but
Even clubs, like the Blue Note in Napa.
Oh, exactly.
Kenny G oriented.
A jazz club, but they don't present much jazz.
Mute and unmute again, please.
Hopefully that works. Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't know
No
what
problem.
the issue is, but
Yeah, I don't know.
I love the smoke from the candles.
yeah. So I was officially shooting the festival on this occasion, so I was leaning on the stage along with the other photographers and caught this. Kareem obviously has been a jazz supporter for much of his life. The great tenor saxophonist Ralph Moore. I've also had the pleasure of becoming good friends with, one of the great saxophonists on the scene. It's digital. This was shot at the World Stage. I think right after COVID began. I was really fortunate. Dwight Trible, who's the executive director of the stage and a world-renowned vocalist, asked me to be the house photographer after COVID started. And so I felt so grateful. Very few people, let's just say, were seeing live jazz in any clubs, and I was there. I was the audience, along with Dwight, Renee, and the video and audio guys upstairs. So that was actually really fortunate for me, anyway. And they began video streaming. They got a grant for some video and audio equipment. So in a way, that kind of helped out the club. We just lost George Bohannon a few weeks ago. This is at the Jazz Bakery. Again, years ago. Beautiful, humble human being. Oscar Brashear also passed away within the last couple years. A great trumpet player. This is at the Seabird Lounge in Long Beach, California. Azar Lawrence's gig. Oscar played with him several times back then. And as Leslie mentioned, great Phil Ranlin, a Naptown born trombonist, childhood friends with Freddie Hubbard, made a big impact on the Detroit scene with his Tribe records and magazine, I believe. And he was a major presence here in Los Angeles for some 40 years. Sadly had a stroke a few years back, and fortunately he's got a couple daughters who helped him move back to Indianapolis. Dear friend. I don't know what you could say about Roy McCurdy. This was shot within a few months ago. He's 88. And he still drives these bands like a train engine. Just a beautiful person. I think he mentioned he's working on a book also. Dear friend, we lost almost 10 years ago, Alphonse Mouzon. At a gig at one of the very well attended gigs in Los Angeles because it's free. At LACMA, they've had, I think, for some 30 years, a Friday night jazz series they've been presenting. Alphonse was playing with Azar Lawrence on this occasion.
And is this an outdoor venue?
This is outdoor, yeah.
You got him right between the cymbals there.
Exactly. Doug Karn, who's maybe had a bit of a renaissance in his career, certainly deserving, was a very popular keyboardist who did some great recordings on Black Jazz label in the 70s. He's here was here at the World Stage a few years ago. Just a beautiful cat. And again, I guess the lights were on this occasion.
It's tough in that
Nice.
contrast situation with very dark background. He's pretty dark, and the white hat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it probably would have been harder to print in a traditional darkroom. This is Dwight Trible, the executive director and at the World Stage. He performs there with his own band, Cosmic Vibrations, which is a fantastic collective. Occasionally he was sitting in with the Pan-African People's Orchestra, Horace Tapscott's jazz collective of 60 plus years.
Mute and unmute again, please.
Yikes. Hopefully that helped.
Yeah.
These are beautiful, iconic portraits. Do you ever pull back a little bit and get more of the context, or look at the audience or the venue, or
On occasion, really, you know what? Sometimes I'm so quote focused on the band and trying to listen while I'm shooting that I have sometimes asked friends at the World Stage, for example, how big was the audience? Because I barely turned around. So you know, I will shoot usually the whole stage, or you know, a few exposures of the whole stage. Sometimes the cats would like to see that. Sometimes they're just so spread out. You know, I'll shoot in groups of 2 or 3. But for me, it's more about the individual portrait.
I had to learn to separate the visual from the audio because some musicians do more visual stuff when they're not, you know, really blowing the doors down with the music, but they're visually striking. So it was kind of a challenge to think visually while I'm hearing all this music. Betty Carter
Yeah.
comes to mind. She'll kind of freeze in the middle of her theater actions, and you just have to be ready for it.
Yes. As you know, we have to be ready for anything. This is Gilbert Castellanos. Gilbert's again a tremendous trumpet player, dear friend. He's been voted Mr. Jazz San Diego for several times over the last dozen years. He moved down there and has really done a tremendous job in terms of building up the jazz scene in San Diego. And this is at a gig. The beginning of the summer was Charles McPherson celebrating his 85th birthday. That's Charles behind him in the background.
I like that this is one of that he's looking right at you. One of the
Yes, and I've been notorious in missing those shots often in my life because I feel like I'm sometimes, Brian, I'm sure you'll relate to this, that you sometimes feel that if they turned your way just for a moment, it would be a perfect photograph. And I get so excited when it rarely does happen that I've blown most of them. But mercifully, Gilbert found something to look at, and it worked.
Gilbert's also been honored by the JJA as a jazz hero.
Gilbert?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I don't think I remembered that. Yeah, tremendous. San Diego, he is really, he's got a great jazz program he's put together with the young cats, the Young Lions Jazz Conservatory that he's put together. So more power to him. One of the seminal figures in the avant-garde scene in Los Angeles, Bobby Bradford, another good friend, an incredible human being. I think he turned 85. He turned 90 this past year. I saw him about a month ago. He's vital, still playing. He's got a incredible sense of humor, one of the funniest people I've ever met. And this was at the Blue Whale quite a while ago.
He's playing cornet, right?
What's that?
He's playing the cornet.
Yes.
May I ask, how would you describe the moment you're looking for? Because when you take those black and white film pictures, you have to decide when to shoot, and okay, you have to be precise. The moment you're looking for a portraiture.
For me, I'm looking for light. Really, the light, or shall we say, the interplay between the light and shadow. So, there was a side light on Bobby's face. And as a photographer, I'm just hoping he would turn just slightly enough to make this photo work. And
This
he
is also with
obliged.
telephoto, with a telephoto lens?
Yes, yeah. 70 to 200.
You're going to have to mute and unmute again.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Good.
Hopefully that's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby came, I interviewed Bobby, and it was published in All About Jazz. He was made Ornette Coleman's acquaintance. They both grew up in Dallas, and I think he said they were in high school together. And Ornette moved here to LA first, and Bobby Bradford was in the Army for a while, and then he moved to Los Angeles. And he was telling me that one day, just some random afternoon, he was riding the bus, and he gets on, and who did he see on the bus but Ornette Coleman? And they obviously got back together and did some tremendous work in the 50s and beyond.
He used to play with John Carter, right?
Yeah, for a long time here in Los Angeles. There were tremendous bands that they had. Yeah, until John passed way too soon.
They did 5 records together on Gramavision, I think. It was a whole suite that John Carter had composed.
Yeah.
And I should mention, in terms of Bobby Bradford's work with Ornette, it's on Science Fiction that you can hear that really come to fruition.
Roberto Miranda, a great bassist, played often with John Carter and Bobby Bradford on their recordings, as well as with Horace Tapscott on some remarkable recordings as well. Roberto is just an amazing human being. Had the fortune of becoming friends with him when he was playing with Kenny Burrell for many years. And he still is, I believe, on the faculty at UCLA in the Jazz Studies program. Speaking of Bobby Bradford, one of his partners in music, Vinnie Golia, a multi-reed player, great composer, and really the other leader of the improvised music scene here in Los Angeles. Incredible musician. Again, just the one, if anything has really struck me about all the musicians I've had the pleasure of meeting, is how humble and open and generous with their time they are as individuals, as people. It's been a real pleasure and an honor to get to know them. And this is at the Blue Whale digital photograph. Durf Reclaw, a Chicago native, in Los Angeles for a long time. He passed about 2 years ago. Incredibly talented human being, percussionist, flautist, and he brought his band into, if you're familiar with Barbara Morrison, great jazz and rhythm and blues vocalist, she had, before she passed, and it's still up, and they present music, the Barbara Morrison Performing Arts Center in Leimert Park, just a few hundred feet down from the world stage. And Durf brought his band in there, and I had never heard him sing before. And he sang in a Louis Armstrong style in terms of that gravelly voice. I was blown away, absolutely blown away. Durf was such an incredible human being. And his daughters have set up a foundation to support young musicians. So that's also just a wonderful legacy for him. That's a digital photograph. This is also digital at the Angel City Jazz Festival. Rocco Samozi's been putting that on for maybe 15 years or so at the John Anson Ford Amphitheater. Benny Maupin brought his band in there. And again, this is one of those photographs. I try and get some of the motion and electricity that these cats generate on stage. Kamasi Washington, basically raised in the world stage as a youngster. His friends from junior high school, all more or less raised at the world stage, playing with the Horace Tapscott Orchestra. And of course, a few years ago, he just blew up internationally and became one of the real faces of jazz these days. A beautiful human being, and brings a lot of energy. This was at the world stage as well.
Mute and unmute again.
Hopefully that works. Robert Turner, a rising star on the piano and keyboards. He's been playing with Azar Lawrence for the last couple of years. This was in the hotel lobby up in Half Moon Bay after a weekend gig. It's fun hitting the road with them. Another LA-based musician, Jesse Sharps, also was a director of the Pan-African People's Orchestra for many years after Horace Tapscott passed. He lived in Germany for a long time and returned about 7 or 8 years ago, I think. Great musician, bass clarinet in this case. He plays various flutes, and he actually plays accordion.
Yeah, this is a stunning photo too. The slight movement. It's almost like a drawing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was able to delete a few, but several came out really well. This is warming up, sound check time with the Pan-African People's Orchestra. Michael Session, a great alto saxophonist on the left. Devin Daniels, who is a rising star on the alto to his right. it's been great being able to listen to Devin really growing musically in the last few years. Boy, I was just reading somewhere, maybe it was posted on Facebook from All About Jazz or some other publication that was raving about Devin and a new recording that he released. So that's great to see. And really one of the most beautiful things I've been able to witness is this intergenerational relationship with the orchestra, as they're known here in LA. Michael was a director of the band. His son, a great drummer, Michaela Session, has taken over leadership of the band, but they've kept something going that started over 60 years ago. This is at the world stage as well. Another one of the young cats, Randall Fisher, was playing here with, I think, Phil Ranlin at the world stage. Beautiful young man, dedicated to the music, very respectful. Just love seeing him with with his elders on the bandstand. Christy Smith just passed away not about a month and a half ago. He was living in Asia for many years. He would come back to LA, play at the jazz, at the world stage every year when he came back. It was a real shocking loss, his passing. I'm glad I kind of caught the motion and able to freeze actually in focus his face, kind of like this photograph. Christy Smith. And another one of the young cats, Aaron Shaw, he just performed at the world stage last week with a band. He was playing here with Phil Ranlin. Just another great musician, up and coming tenor and soprano saxophonist. This is also a member of the Pan-African People's Orchestra, Maia, incredibly talented musician, vocalist. She plays flute, the harp, and vibraphone. Really remarkable. Wide angle. I was pretty close to her for this photograph. Shanna Tucker was playing with Benny Maupin at the world stage in this photograph. Has been in North Carolina, I believe. She has a teaching gig there and has been performing in that part of the country. Very talented young woman.
Do you carry the different cameras with different lenses on them, or just one with a zoom with different focal lengths?
You know, I'm getting a little long in the tooth for carrying around too much equipment. I've got a few cameras, but usually these days I just take one body with me and rely on two lenses, a wide angle and a telephoto zoom.
We're getting that distortion again, Chuck.
This is Chris Lowry, a wonderful trumpet player. He was playing with Azar Lawrence and his band for a couple years. This was at the Miracle Theater in Long Beach a couple years ago. The only thing I have against Chris is that being from Philadelphia, he's a fanatic sports fan, and he loves teams that I just hate.
Could you please name a few principles you would follow when framing?
Now, I think I read ages ago in a photography book that the famous Magnum photographer Robert Capa said that if he had any advice to give to photographers is just when you're ready to shoot something, to get closer.
Okay, thanks.
So, I see a lot of photographs. I assume there are situations where you can't get closer. But other than that, and just trying to really to pre-visualize what the light looks like and to make sure you see the entire frame so that whatever background you're including makes sense. This is
Thanks.
Tony Austin, a great drummer, been with Kamasi Washington, I think since they were in junior high school. And Tony was just taking a break during a recording session with Azar Lawrence sometime this past year. Again, being a street photographer, I try and catch, when I can, those moments off the stage. The great Pharoah Sanders. I think if there's one musician I saw more than anyone else was Pharoah. Probably saw over 100 sets when he would perform from the Village Vanguard to the Keystone in San Francisco to Los Angeles. Here he is just before finishing up a gig here in Los Angeles. It was a duet with a great pianist, Benito Gonzalez.
That's a remarkable portfolio.
Well, thank you so much, Howard.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have a question, if you don't mind. Going back to the first Azar Lawrence photograph.
Uh-huh.
Over his right shoulder, there was the
Yes.
and then over his left shoulder was like costumes. Is that his stuff that was on the shelf?
I don't think costumes. I think just his change of clothes. The other thing was a copy of the photograph.
Yes.
Kenny Burrell had put together a on the left side of the photograph, a shoot in L.A. to sort of in the spirit of the great jazz day in Harlem.
Yes.
And so he had dozens of musicians. I had seen Kenny at Catalina's the week before that photographic shoot, and I was backstage with him, and he told me about the shoot, and he said to be sure to come down there. And William Claxton was supposed to shoot it, and so I was thrilled. They shot it in front of one of the buildings at UCLA where Kenny was the head of the jazz department for decades. And I get there, and there's a young woman standing around on a ladder composing a photograph, and I'm wondering, where's Bill Claxton? And sadly, he passed away that week. So I took quite a few photographs myself, but that's what's on the wall there above Azar.
And whose photo is that?
What's that?
Whose photo is that?
I don't know the woman's name, not somebody that I would have recognized.
You did a good job by the look of it.
Or was this the same year, 58, or it was later?
No. This was probably in 2009 or so.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see the difference now looking more closely at the photograph. What I'm seeing there is the plastic over the clothing from the cleaners, but it makes it look like it's like gold reflective stuff and silver.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it was just in the dressing room.
Right. I just have just one more question. Some of the bands use the title orchestra. Is that did Sun Ra copyright that name, or is that just out there? I just can't remember.
I couldn't tell you, but I think it's the 65th year of the Pan-African People's Orchestra
Okay.
that Horace Tapscott started.
Mhm.
So it was in the early 60s, and I couldn't tell you anything about copyright,
Right. Thank you.
of course.
Well, you're getting distorted again. You're talking, Chuck.
The photographer's name, the woman who took the picture,
Uh-huh.
is Kelsey Edwards.
Oh, how did you find that out?
I just Googled it.
Could you repeat that?
There you go.
What's
I
her name?
never,
Kelsey Edwards.
Kelsey, K-E-L-S-E-Y?
Kelsey, K-E-L-S-E-Y. Yeah.
not someone I'm familiar with
Nice
here
job.
now.
We'll have
No,
to
looks
find
like
her.
she's a professional portrait photographer.
They actually, because a lot of some of the musicians had gigs later in the day, they actually photographed some of them separately. Like I've got a photograph of Gerald Wilson with trumpeter Winston Byrd and I think the great Terry Gibbs and his son Jerry sitting on a different set of steps. And they were photographed them, and I guess they photoshopped in some of it. They did a good job with it because it wasn't at all noticeable to me that it wasn't one sitting. They also had different. I think they organized it sometime by instrument for the different photographs that they took before they made this composite out of it.
Thanks for sharing your work, Chuck.
I have another, sorry to interrupt again, but Chuck, how many people from that Harlem photograph have you photographed besides Sonny Rollins and what's his name who just passed, other saxophonists?
Benny Golson.
Benny Golson.
Thank you.
I think Roy Haynes is in that photograph.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's curious.
And off the top of my head, I don't quite remember who else I might have photographed who was in that.
Yeah.
Those three for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I didn't start taking I started taking my camera around with me to the Vanguard. I think it was either a junior or senior year in high school with an old friend. We used to sneak in there. We weren't 21. And I would, they always would make an announcement, no photography, please. And so I would surreptitiously try and shoot a few frames. Never entered my mind to perhaps talk to the club owners and try and do it, legitimately.
Mm-hmm.
But I did quite often, again, started taking my camera around back then.
Still using an Nikon.
I think I was using a Konica back then.
Okay.
When I first started. Guys, I'm honored. It was a pleasure being able to share my work with you guys and the audience. And again, many thanks.